Is Deltarune a video game? People have been enjoying Deltarune Chapter 5 recently, and why wouldn't they? Toby Fox has been adding puzzle pieces to his rich storytelling tapestry since Undertale's demo back in 2013. But something freaky kooky hit me when I was replaying Chapter 5. Yes, the evidence was everywhere. Characters gaining EXP, leveling up, equipping armor, opening treasure chests, menus appearing out of thin air, the world stopping every time someone has to pick fight or act. At first I dismissed these things as mere coincidences, as mere subtle references to the niche Japanese hobby of video games, but after Chapter 5 it's impossible to deny. People have been theorizing about Deltarune for almost years now. They've been theorizing so hard. So fucking hard, the theories just keep coming. I'm gonna theorize. I'm beginning to believe my new theory, that Deltarune doesn't just look like a video game. I think Deltarune is a video game. Now I know this theory is controversial. I know this theory might even be dangerous. I know that I might get shot like a sick dog in the streets for even thinking this, for even entertaining the notion, but if we consider that Deltarune is a video game, a staggering number of quirks begin to slide right into place. To examine this further, we'll be tackling the history of computing, Platonism, two different sects of Gnosticism, alchemy, Hermeticism, Slavoj Žižek, and of course, MatPat. Now, before you call me crazy cuco insano bananas, hear me out. I know that there are thousands of theories out there. Bunker theories, root theories, device theories, Gaster theories, Chris Knight, Des Knight, Noel Knight, Rudy Knight, but this is the biggest twist that Toby Fox has been building toward. And this theory wraps up everything perfectly. It's that Deltarune is secretly a video game.
It's the most exciting thing you can do with the inside of a cake.
Before we decide if Deltarune is a video game, we need to identify what a video game is. A video game has two components, video and game. The video portion comes from the idea of a piece of software that depicts interactable elements on a screen that the player can influence. The game portion comes from the idea that the software is for entertainment purposes, and, like games, adheres to certain game rules. There are, then, only a handful of criteria for something being a video game. 1. A piece of software on a computing device, and 2. A game with established rules. The public's first exposure to Deltarune was the now infamous Survey program, which Toby Fox released on Halloween 2018. But before that, we have to establish some groundwork. In 1837, the inventor Charles Babbage invented a device known as the analytical engine, as a development of the earlier difference engine that performed calculation tasks. This mechanical device, which operated using switches, either in an on and off configuration, shaped the development of computers as they are known today. Today, computers are simultaneously more complex and more user-friendly, with most everyone walking around with a computer in their pocket, far more powerful than any analytical engine. It is into this milieu that Deltarune is born, a milieu of multi-platform releases, cell phones, and personal computers. It is also a milieu of AI, an oversaturation of information, and historical divisions between people. First, let's prove that Deltarune is actually a piece of software. According to Wikipedia, Deltarune was released on macOS, Windows, Nintendo Switch, and PlayStation. All of these devices are, in fact, computing devices. Even though they are very different, they all operate on digital hardware, so the first criteria is easily met. And now, something a little harder to prove. Is Deltarune a game? Let's examine the original Deltarune, the so-called Survey program, since every version of Deltarune is a modification of this original piece of code. My first piece of evidence that Deltarune is a game is with its release on Steam in 2021. But the eagle-eyed viewers might notice two things about this claim. First of all, while Steam is a marketplace for video games, Deltarune wasn't released on the platform until late into its development. The paid version released in 2025, but Deltarune Chapters 1 and 2 were available on Steam since 2021. Even this, however, is tenuous, as that was 3 years since the original Survey program's release. And of course, just because a piece of software is hosted on Steam doesn't mean that it is actually a video game. That is certainly not the extent of my theory, and many skeptics have already covered the availability of Deltarune before. However, careful examination of the Steam page for Deltarune gives us a number of very interesting clues. First, here's an excerpt from the 2026 Deltarune Steam page under the Featured tab. Quote, "Creative bullet-dodging based battles inspired by games like Touhou and Chrono Trigger." How provocatively peculiar. Touhou and Chrono Trigger are both video games, but being inspired by video games doesn't necessarily mean that a work is a video game. Next, from the 2026 Deltarune Steam page under the FAQ section. Then when's Chapter 6? We are aiming for a 2027 release. Meanwhile, we will be periodically releasing information on the development progress of the game. The game. How engrossingly intriguing. Now, this only proves definitively that Chapter 6 will be some form of game, and not specifically a video game. It also doesn't refer to Chapters 1 through 5 being video games. While this is inconclusive, it's hard to argue that a very hazy shape is beginning to take form. A shape in the silhouette of a game box. Also, as previously discussed, Deltarune isn't just available on PC and Mac, but on the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation. The Switch is a game console, but also hosts a variety of software like Hulu and Netflix that are not games. Also, as we are all aware, the PlayStation has no games at all. Not only this, but my examination thus far is only researching things outside of Deltarune as a text. It's not fair to examine Deltarune in this way, as if the answers we seek can be found in the information panel of a Wikipedia article. What is a game in its essence? In the formal study of game theory, a game is any interactive simulation where an outcome depends on the choices of multiple decision makers with certain rules. Compare the game Tetris to something like Microsoft Excel. Both are computer software with rules, but Tetris has a particular end goal, to raise the number of points. Excel is an open-ended software where the end goal is in flux. Other games like Super Mario feature points systems, but often the goal of players is to reach the end of the game. Is Deltarune more like Tetris or more like Microsoft Excel? Is Deltarune more like Mario or more like the Hulu app? Does Deltarune feature a simulation that depends on the choices of multiple decision makers? Why does my cock not work anymore? Deltarune only supports one single player. That's it. Deltarune, then, is a spreadsheet software. Let's all go home, everyone. But wait, there's something hidden here. There's something inside the computer wires. What? Toby Fox? To the user, both Toby Fox and the computer running the code are invisible, hidden behind an opaque group of systems that control the entire world. Every input has one distinct output. Press the left key, Chris moves left. Press X, the inventory opens. The complex code behind these processes operates so quickly as to be invisible, and since it has already been programmed, the code is hypostatic, meaning it cannot be changed by the program itself. The idea for a consistent set of rules and laws governing a world is an idea that is taken from something in the real world called physics. The question becomes far more complex, though, when one asks the question, why? Why did Toby Fox create this world? Why did people help him? How should we interact with this program? Can that interaction between creator and creation be called a game? Am I ever going to get a refund on all that blue To answer this question, we need to go even further back, to the 4th century BCE. DEMIURGE, spelled Delta, Eta, Mu, Iota, Omicron, Upsilon, Rho, Gamma, Omicron, Sigma, is a Greek word meaning craftsman. Literally, it translates to public worker or artisan, but it has been used as a synonym for the maker of the universe in various traditions. The world in its totality came from nowhere. The Big Bang, the closest theory of an origin to the universe science has found, is a non-personal genesis event. But everything in the more immediate world that we see has been created by someone, whether it is a building, the design for a lamp, the area someone uses for their lawn to grow, and in a larger sense, society and every structure therein, from money to religion, to work, to love. The word craftsman contrasts the idea of the formless natural void, the entropic chaos that everything is made from. In a way, we are all demiurges. In Plato's Timaeus, dated to 360 BC, Plato reasons the existence of a demiurge from the idea that if things cannot exist without causes, then there must be a first cause, a so-called prime mover. A quote from Timaeus. First then, in my judgment, we must make a distinction and ask, what is that which always is and has no becoming? And what is that always is, always becoming, and never is? 400 years later, in the hundreds AD, Christianity was forming in the Near East and Rome as a critique of Judaism and spiritual movement. During this time, before the orthodoxy of biblical canon was established by Athanasius in 367 AD, there was a diverse breadth of thought regarding Jesus Christ and his teachings. During the time, many sects of Christianity were formed, two of which we would now refer to as Gnostic. Gnostics from the Sethian and Valentinian schools would refer to themselves merely as Christians, but after their persecution in the centuries after biblical canon's establishment, they would be referred to by the name given them by critics such as the church father Irenaeus, Gnostic heretics. The Sethian school of Gnosticism advanced the Platonic idea of the demiurge, associating it with the god of the Jewish Torah named Yahweh Elohim, and declared the creator of the world to be evil and malicious. A quote from the Apocryphon of John. When he gazed upon his creation surrounding him, he said to his host of demons, the ones who had come forth out of him, I am a jealous God, and there is no God but me. The above passage, of course, refers to the book of Genesis, which depicts God saying in Exodus 23, Thou shalt have no other gods before me. This depicts the god Yahweh Elohim as an ignorant, cruel, and malicious God, and in the Apocryphon of John, Yaldabaoth, as he is called, even rapes Eve and forces her to bear Cain and Abel. Unlike modern Christians who characterize God as kind and benevolent, the Sethians posited that the creator of this world is actively and intentionally evil and ignorant. In a video called The Mythology and Metaphysics of Deltarune, the user Goner Gnostic discusses how these early Gnostic ideas of craftsmen relates to the story of Deltarune, but their analysis does not go far enough.
Gaster was a man defined by his intellect, serving almost as a symbol for the very idea of wisdom, the same way Sophia does. And as with Sophia, the hubris of this wisdom led him to a tragic error, as he tried to understand and meddle with the primal forces of this world, an error which would result in his fall. The description of Gaster's fall is dripping with symbolism, alluding not only to the Christian myths like Lucifer's fall from heaven, the fall of man after eating from the tree of knowledge, and of course Sophia's fall from grace, but also, of all things, the story of Humpty Dumpty.
They associate the demiurge with the mysterious figure W.D. Gaster, and credit Gaster with ruling over the world of Deltarune. But the symbolism goes far, far deeper than only this. The Valentinians were another, debatably earlier sect of Gnostics. To Valentinians, unlike the Sethians, the demiurge of the Valentinian system is the result of error, a botched attempt to create something beautiful instead of a cruel, spiteful tyrant. A quote from the Tripartite Tractate. Over all the archons he appointed an archon with no one commanding him. He is the lord of all of them, that is, the countenance which the Logos brought forth in his thought as a representation of the Father of the totalities. So far, we have examined 4 versions of the demiurge: the neutral prime mover of Timaeus, the omnipotent and omnipresent God of Christianity, the cruel tyrant of Sethianism, and the ignorant ruler in error of Valentinianism. All 4 of these beings look very different, but they are in fact one and the same, part of the great archetypical symbol of the almighty ruler, the Father, the Maker, the Creator, the Father God found in every mythology: Zeus, Jupiter, Odin, Svarog, Izanagi, Bathala, Dyaus Pita, Atum, Toby Fox. Toby Fox is the creator of Deltarune's world. His team is responsible for the simulation in its entirety, and must be counted as an entity when considering if Deltarune is a game. Toby Fox the Demiurge, his team, the Archons, they must be considered in the systems that they create, just as in the real world we have to consider the rulers over the systems that govern our real lives. In short, Toby is the Demiurge. Demiurge, spelled with a capital Delta. In Deltarune, who are the craftsmen? Who makes the world? Is the world but a game? And is the Demiurge a gamer?
How much money would it take to make you spend a night in a cemetery?
Okay. Let's start out with the real world. The real world is level 0. The atoms and the molecules, the physical laws, nature in its most basal form. Okay. Next, level 1 is the reality we create by being subject inside of level 0. Level 1 is the interpretation of level 0, linguistic markers used to describe the physical, like chairs and headphones. They're ideas that are attached to objects. Okay, so level 2 is the imaginary, the combination of level 1 objects establishing these patterns and concepts. Ideas like love and happiness are found here. So yeah, level 3 is purely fictitious, the hypothetical, the human brain using patterns to predict future events and speculate. This is where you have like storytelling, social media, news, novels, TV shows, whatever. Level 4 is the final lowest layer. It is this totalizing and incorruptible idea, the purely subjective, the impossible to categorize. We'll call this dreams, all right? So Deltarune is a narrative that spans all 4 of these levels. Level 0 is the raw programming that exists in the physical reality, the computer. The computer that interprets Toby Fox's code, the one you own in your house. Level 1 is the reality, the program. It's experienced by us, like the words, the sprites, the on-screen little devices that are interpreted by us. Level 2 is the fictional rules and kayfabe that comprises the reality of Deltarune as like a product. It's the entire project. It's the object. And then level 3 is the internal world of Deltarune, the characters as people, the beings as a reality. And then finally, level 4 is... Do you hear that? Do you hear that? On an entry level, we see a demiurge, a craftsman, a creator of the constituent parts. So level 0 is created by Toby Fox using Game Maker 5 to alter physical reality, like to write the code. Any work, fictional or otherwise, first has to be conceptualized before it can be organized into actionable items that affect the real world. It's pretty simple. Level 1 is created by the player, using our cognition to interpret and comprehend Toby Fox's program, using words on the screen and the symbols that represent the characters. And then level 2 is the fiction of the creation of the game world, which is orchestrated by W.D. Gaster, which Gunnar Gnostic was talking about. And beyond this, things get very interesting. Level 3 comprises the creation of dark worlds, which is an act of creation within creation. It's an anomalous outlier, a nesting of false realities within each other. It's cool. If level 2 is the inanimate coming to life by the suspension of disbelief, then level 3 is the fictionally fictitious becoming real by the hyper-suspension of disbelief. The demiurge of this layer varies, with many characters within Deltarune creating dark worlds for various reasons. Finally, level 4 is... Quiet. Hang on. Shh. What the hell is that noise? So another YouTuber, Molly Stars, I'm in her Discord, it's pretty cool, explores the way that Deltarune breaks the fourth wall, as it were. She points out that in a video game, the line between the fourth wall and the audience is blurry. That a game allows the player to interact with worlds, and that the nature of referencing the fourth wall is different and brings out different emotions in a video game.
When you're the one that has the most impact on a fictional world, things turn out differently. To give you the power over the fate of a work's story and over every single thing that your protagonist does is much different, which goes without saying, but to break the fourth wall here opens so many new opportunities. You can do it to unease the player, to challenge the preconceived notion that the screen between the game and them is unbreakable, to make them find solutions to problems in very unorthodox ways.
But is Deltarune really a video game, and is Deltarune really breaking these walls? In the strictest sense, no. There is no W.D. Gaster, there's no device, there's no connection with anyone that occurs when you open the survey program in like a literal way. The layers between the real and the false are one way. So, no being from a lower order reality can emerge literally into the higher order reality. This is not possible. Chris can't become real, right? W.D. Gaster cannot really connect to us. It's just Toby Fox playing pretend. They're computer code. They're instructions. They're something pretending to be something else. Simulacra, simulation, right? But in Deltarune, this one-way hierarchy is what Ralsei worships. In Chapter 5, he starts worshipping. He starts praying. He believes that there is a one-way relationship between Lightners and Darkners. The Darkners are inferior by virtue of being in a lower-order reality, just like Chris is in a lower-order reality to us. Is Ralsei praying to the Angel, to Toby Fox, to W.D. Gaster? We don't know. It doesn't matter. What he is praying to is the hierarchy that undergirds everything. But is he right? I don't know. In alchemy, there's a term known as prima materia. You've heard of the prima materia. It's aether, it's the fifth element, it's the philosopher's stone, whatever. It's a pure, rarefied distillation of chaos, the material from which creation has been wrought. In Norse myth, you have the Ginnunga Gap. In Greek myth, you have chaos. And in Christianity, the formless void before God declared there to be light. I think I have a quote from Poimandares in the Corpus Hermeticum in your hand. So, but in a little while, darkness came settling down on a part of it, awesome and gloomy, coiling in sinuous folds, so that methought it like unto a snake. And then the darkness changed into some form of a moist nature, tossed about beyond all power of words, belching out smoke as if from a fire, and groaning forth a wailing sound that beggars all description. If you played Deltarune, this is very familiar. Far beneath Hometown, there is water. Dark fountains spring forth from the ground in geysers of black. Darkness of a moist nature is being tossed about, yeah? So when a computer boots, it begins on a black screen, usually with like an underscore denoting the location of cursor. When you open the command prompt, it's the same. It's pitch black, nothingness. It's gaps between letters. And when your computer loses power, the photons stop being expelled from the monitor. What does that remind you of? Entry number 17. Dark, darker, yet darker. The darkness keeps growing. The shadows cutting deeper. Photon readings negative. This experiment seems very, very interesting. What do you two think? Darkness in Deltarune is synonymous with the idea of chaos, with the roaring, with destruction. I previously made a video comparing the roaring to the apocalypse of Revelation, and in Goner Gnostic's video, they draw a parallel with the fountains and the roaring and the flood of Noah, as well as the sort of archetypical flood myth from history. That's great. The contemporary philosopher Slavoj Žižek advances the idea of philosophical negation, which comes from the philosopher Hegel. To Hegel, the spirit, or Geist, represents the totality of human experience, something like the Freudian or Jungian collective unconscious, right? The idea that we humans are part of something greater. Here's a quote from Hegel. Spirit is this power only by looking the negative in the face and tarrying with it. This tarrying with the negative is the magical power that converts it into being. This power is identical with what we earlier called. And then Žižek continues. The threat today is not passivity, but pseudo-activity, the urge to be active, to participate, to mask the nothingness of what goes on. Hegel and Žižek are trying to illustrate the power of what Hegel calls, in this quote, the negative, or negation. What is negation? We've discussed so far the levels of reality, but as there are levels of constructed reality, there are levels of the negative reality as well. It's the negative photons, right? So think about any object. Think about a windmill. You look at it, you see a windmill, right? Let's negate it once. It becomes not a windmill, but just a thing, an object, a nameless field of space, right? Now, the act of creation is to double negate. Like multiplying two negative numbers, you get something positive. Now, the windmill, twice negated, can be something again, something different. It can be anything. It can be a friend, it can be your companion, it can be your enemy, it can be a giant, and you can ask your friend Sancho Panza to help you kill them. Ralsei worships and prays to hierarchy, but he's wrong. He fears the roaring because of how it breaks the rules and returns the world to the prima materia of darkness, how it negates the world. Ralsei fears chaos, and when we see the Titan in Chapter 4, we just kind of take Ralsei at his word that they represent fear incarnate, as many other YouTuber theorists have said, but this isn't right. This is wrong. The Titan doesn't represent fear. It represents the fifth element, the prima materia, Noah's flood, pure chaos. The Titan is negation, and like Ralsei, we fear negation. But negation isn't evil, right? In a more practical sense, look at Chris Dreamer. Their computer code. They're a simulation responding to computer inputs. Now negate that. Now Chris is nothing. It's meaningless, totally void of anything. But look again. Chris is now a being, a thing. By suspending disbelief, Chris can act on their own, can star not just in Deltarune, but in YouTube animations and fan fictions and speculative video essays and everything. Chris becomes a new kind of object, a new device. By ignoring Chris's singular existence as a game character, Chris can be conceptualized as a being on their own, and even if they have a myriad of depictions, they are their own person. This is level 4 of reality that... Quiet. Hang on. What the hell is that noise? Shh. I said before that Chris and W.D. Gaster cannot become real. But at the same time, like, can't they? Like, intuitively, can't they? They can't come through the screen physically, but they don't need to. They have emerged into the real world by way of your cognition. They have hijacked you in some small way, and they exist by way of that cognition. In order to understand fiction, we have to suspend our disbelief. We have to like manually animate it using our consciousness, right? We think of fiction as not real, but when we use the same mental processes to manually animate a concept of ourself, we are using the same mental processes. It's the same stuff. It's crazy. If we think of ourselves as real, it's not fair to consider the fictional not real. It is separate to us, but it's not real. It's mind-blowing. It's not fair to think of Chris and Ralsei as on different levels of reality at all. Real is a meaningless distinction. Neo never leaves the Matrix. Pomni never enters the circus. The main theme of Deltarune is quintessence, right? It's the fifth element, the waters from underneath Hometown, the fountains, the darker than dark, the pale from Disco Elysium. The meaning of this aether that suffuses reality is absolute negation. It's the end of the world, the apocalypse of Revelation, the flood of Noah. But the flood of Noah contains a contradiction. We, like you and I in the myth, we exist after it. This is an act of totalizing obliteration, and yet it gives way to the entire history of humanity. That's crazy. The roaring is the end, and there's something after it. Or maybe something under it. This is not just true of Deltarune either. This negative aether, this negation, is a tool that creatives use constantly. Every artist starts with a blank canvas. Every musician starts with a dead silence. And every computer boots to a blank screen. I think I heard it that time. Level 4 of reality is level 0.
Pictures so real you won't believe your eyes.
It's Funk McLovin, hovering above reality, slicing through the static with the lucid mind clarity. Gnostic commentary with the planetary cadence. Patreon's the portal where we upgrade your awakeness. Step into my temple, no ego, no hassle. My Patreon sermon's free, no password. You fund the funk, keep my heart thumping. Support the revelation, keep the cosmos drumming. Then I shift gears smooth on the tube for you, breaking media down like a digital guru. Catch me in the tall grass, data stream broadcast. Great hits with the wit, my style's unmatched. Funk McLovin, double life mission. Patreon and YouTube, I'm a mind physician. Gnosis in the morning, fresh beats at night. 2 places, 1 vibe, let's keep it tight. Join the Patreon if you feel the vibe. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm also on Bandcamp. Sorry, I got something in my teeth, fuck. Was that popcorn? Anyway, bye. The Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail. This symbol has existed, at least since ancient Egypt, but it is most common in the practice of Hermeticism. The symbol's meaning is debated and subjective, but when I see the snake eating its own tail, I see the idea of contradiction and how contradiction comprises the world. The idea of infinite regress. I discussed before how Plato reasoned the existence of a demiurge based on the idea that every effect has a cause, which is true. But does it actually logically follow that there must be a first cause? Could it be possible that causes and effects go back infinitely on a chain? When the Ouroboros eats its own tail, it enjoys the delicious and nourishing flavor of itself, but at the same time it will eventually commit delicious suicide. And what happens to the serpent when it finally reaches the end of what it can consume? Does it cease to be? Does it simply turn inside out? It's a divide by zero error. Toby Fox's creation inspires other creation as a causal chain. People make fanworks, analysis, speculation, and simply discuss the story of Deltarune. Creation is predicated on creation, and the story of Deltarune wears the inspirations it contains on its sleeve, which I have discussed in a previous video of mine. To scratch the surface, Deltarune is influenced by Earthbound, Homestuck, and the game Brandish. These inspirations in turn come from deeper roots, and can be traced back to the primordial myths I've already discussed here, like the Flood monomyth and the idea of Aether. The chain continues without beginning and without an ending. There was no first story, just as there is no last story. Every story will be iterated upon and is an iteration of stories in turn. The world Toby Fox has constructed operates identically to many real-world processes we engage in daily. When we go to work, there is an acceptable limit on our behavior that we have to operate within. When we play basketball, there is an acceptable limit on our behavior. When we use money, we talk on social media, we go to the park. These behavioral limitations are the core of a social species. Games are everywhere. They're the singular atomic particle of society. Earlier, I contrasted Tetris and Microsoft Excel, but in the strictest sense, Excel is a video game. People have recreated Tetris in Excel. This isn't how we use the word game linguistically, of course, but it is the idea of games. Excel is a game, Hulu is a game, Netflix is a game, the coffee shop is a game, YouTube is a game. It's all fucking games. Every fanwork feeds into Deltarune, which in turn feeds back into Deltarune itself. The things took a weird route dialogue from Susie, the theorizing Rudin in Chapter 3 posing as Mike, parodying the theory culture surrounding Deltarune. All of these have found their way back into the work. All of this exists in a singular moment, a dizzyingly small window of time in which these theories are even possible, since Deltarune isn't finished. The webcomic Homestuck, which I've previously covered once or twice, had this as a feature too. The nature of Homestuck changes as you follow it, and early on, reader suggestions dictated the direction of the story. Late in the story, the main character, John Egbert, does something that causes oil to leak out of the work itself and stain other previous pages of the webcomic retroactively. Bug fixes change the program of Deltarune, and add features which change reality as it goes. Your experience with this game changes wildly depending on when you experienced it, and what other media you have seen referencing it. Everything feeds into itself, and everything produces something. Even so, this isn't always good. Sometimes the fangs of the snake sink in, and you get people farming engagement online, people trying to advertise their bad faith interpretations of the work, people trying to leverage the popularity of Deltarune into videos and clickbait thumbnails, trying to stand out in a market, the market of Deltarune. Games! This is all a game! It's easy to look at the beauty of fandom and laud it for what it has given us, but not every act of creation is in and of itself good. Creation is in fact a neutral action, and just like that's true in real life, this reality is present in Deltarune. Every dark world that is created as the backdrop of one of Deltarune's chapters is beautiful in and of itself. Chapter 1 is a luxurious medieval noir. Chapter 2 is a vibrant urban computerscape. Chapter 3 is a lively, sleek television studio. Chapter 4 is a somber and magnificent church. And Chapter 5 is a technicolor garden. And yet at the core of every world is a fountain, spewing darkness, spewing destruction. Each one of these landscapes is a pool of blood in Nidhogg's flesh. In Chapter 5, Flowery challenges Ralsei, laying bare the truth. The Fun Gang is only shutting other dark fountains for their own selfish ends, so they can enjoy the dark fountains alone. Chris, Susie, and Ralsei have made themselves the arbiters of which worlds can and cannot exist, and as such they are destroying. They are trying to stop the tide of creativity, but I already said there is no last story. Flowery and the rest of the Chapter 5 flowers are locked forever in mundane reality, barred from their dream because of the Fun Gang. The final scene of Chapter 5, where each flower thanks Chris, is the flowers accepting their literal deaths. Ralsei believes that the roaring is bad. But why? We have never seen a roaring. We have only seen the consequences for Dark World's existences once, in Chapter 4. But this doesn't mean that Ralsei is telling the truth, nor that all Dark Worlds need to be eradicated. Thank you for watching my dream.
Thought you could handle the intense orange taste of Tang in a glass? Tang!
In Homestuck, there's an action that can be undertaken to reset the story with different conditions. This action is called a scratch, taken from the term scratch from pool, in which the white ball is pocketed and can be placed anywhere on the board by the other player. The worlds of Deltarune and Undertale are very similar, sharing motifs, names, and characters outright. Could Deltarune be a scratched Undertale universe? Could Undertale be a scratched Deltarune universe? It's impossible to know the truth outside of speculation, but the idea of the scratch is very important. The idea of characters in a video game reprising their roles in some different way. This concept is present all over Deltarune in surreal false parallelism. The most prominent example of false parallelism is with Flowery and the Seven Human Souls. I could make an entire video comparing these two groups of characters. What is the significance of this? The motifs, the colors, and even associated items are identical across both games, but in context mean things that are totally disjointed. The Seven Human Souls are the entire impetus behind the story of Undertale, but the Seven Colored Flowers are a mid-boss of a much broader game. The implications could mean anything. It could mean that the flowers are the impetus behind Deltarune 2 in some unknown way. It could mean Toby Fox is trying to lead the viewer astray, and it could simply mean that the viewer ought to simply discard their previous associations. But in the last case, why bother sharing motifs at all? The questions bleed into each other until the significance of the shared aesthetic is just lost. It's gone. Deltarune is a program on the computer. This much has been established, and it is a game, maybe, but the titular question is Deltarune a video game? What is a video game? What is Deltarune? I'm not trying to be obtuse here. I'm not trying to be philosophical. I'm asking these questions because the meaning is starting to bleed out of the entire project, like everything is being consumed by darkness. Deltarune is a computer program. It is fan fiction. It is in the eye of the beholder. It is real. It isn't real. It is a jumble of meaning thrown into a blender, and the fine gray mist has been used to make a 1-to-1 scale replica of the Eiffel Tower. Is Deltarune a video game? Of course, Deltarune, the product, is. But what about Deltarune, the experience? There is no Deltarune, is there? It's all part of a continuum of experiences, a wide array of cause and effect inspired by Toby Fox, the first domino in a long chain that is currently still falling. I could tell you my adventures beginning from this morning, said Alice a little timidly, but it's no use going back to yesterday, because I was a different person then. Earlier, I said that there is no last story. This is true, but stories in and of themselves do end. Homestuck, the webcomic I discussed previously, ended in 2016, but saying that is so arbitrary that it's pretty much pointless. It's been 10 years since Homestuck ended, but the fans are still out there. They're watching, they're waiting, they're enjoying the sequel comic forever. Deltarune is eventually going to reach this same apotheosis. Someday Deltarune is going to be a completed text, and there will be no theories about what is going to happen in the text of the story anymore. In the video by GoldPro, the roots theory is explored. The idea of the interconnectedness of Hometown and the Dark Worlds, the way everything weaves into everything else, the way everything has roots.
The word roots is something that's come up a few times now throughout the first 4 chapters of Deltarune, sometimes only in things like soundtrack names and obscure Deltarune.com pages branching off of spams and sweepstakes. It's never explained what exactly it means, besides being somehow related to the mysterious Eggman, with its prophecy glass showing itself in the Egg's adjacent room. The ambience that plays in Queen's Mansion's basement is called Digital Roots, while the song played in this level of the retro-style Shadow Mantle game is called Bit Roots. Deltarune.com/Lost Where the Forest Would Grow is titled Roots, containing the same prophecy tree from Chapter 4. When clicked on, the tree plays a chord before eventually sending you to Deltarune.com/Windows, again connecting Roots to the Eggman, but also attaching itself to this string of words.
There's a source from which all things come. There are memories and things that came before. There's a foundation from which everything the demiurges make sits on. A story is a root, and it keeps growing, but it needs nourishment, it needs people to connect to, it needs to be seen and interacted with in turn. Homestuck, which ended, then continued, has metastasized. The thing that Homestuck is has changed. The cultural object's meaning changes in real time. It happens all the time. A few years ago, people reevaluated the Star Wars prequels. The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker, in spite of being an incomplete black sheep in the series, is now beloved. Recently, the He-Man movie came out, one of the innumerable cultural artifacts to emerge from the original idea of He-Man. The She-Ra show, a lesbian thriller about friendship, and the recent He-Man film come from the same cultural root, but they are almost entirely unrecognizable from one another. He-Man has existed since 1983 and has undergone so many changes as to be a totally different product. He-Man is toys. He-Man is films. He-Man is games. He-Man is an experience, and not all of it is necessarily good. Scratches are happening all the time. The demiurges of fictional worlds reshuffle the existing structures inside of them and move details around in order to make more stories. Toby Fox reuses his own characters in his next game, his first game being derivative of other games, which in turn are derived from other things entirely. Everything is constantly in impossible flux, such that saying anything definitive about a piece of media is impossible. This is the goal. Chris, Rousey, and Susie are trying to uphold a story. They're trying to continue a story. But stories end. Rousey knows this, and this is the truth that Susie tries to erase in Chapter 4. A story is structure, it is the opposite of chaos, but it is also limitation, and sometimes limitations aren't good. Following the prophecy and the story to its conclusion leads to an ending. Sometimes stories are wrong, sometimes they're unjust. Chris, Rousey, and Susie are upholding the hierarchy, but is that really okay? Is it a good thing to stop the roaring? Here's a question. Rousey says the prophecy is inevitable, but is it? Does it have to be? I can just put down the keyboard and stop playing. No more prophecy. The game isn't finished. No prophecy. The truth of the matter is that even if the future for the Fun Gang is totally deterministic, it still takes effort and willpower to lead to the ending, right? Willpower still exists in a deterministic system. If free will isn't real, you're still using effort to bring about an outcome. That's the paradox of infinite regress. The lack of free will is the existence of free will. The meaning of the prophecy requires someone to enact it. A prophecy is meaningless until it comes to pass, until someone imposes meaning onto it. Nothing means anything until someone comes along and decides what it means. This is the truth at the heart of Deltarune, the game, and Deltarune the cultural object, the truth at the center of the universe itself, total and unfathomable analytical transience. The truth is that reality is entirely shaped by people looking at it. Not hypothetically, not theoretically, not in some metaphysical sense. I mean, literally speaking, everyone, including you and me, is experiencing a different world in its entirety, creating a different world in its entirety, and living in a different world entirely. This is the quintessence of the final level of reality, the dream. Don't forget Chris's last name.
Available to own on video and DVD.
The dream is the unit of reality, the manifestation of willpower. Sham, when Chris gives him the Chapter 5 piece of the Shadow Crystal, describes the crystals as broken dreams that will soon be made into something very, very interesting. What they will be made of remains to be seen, but the idea of will is essential in many pieces of media, especially ones about the broad topic of unreality. The recently completed The Amazing Digital Circus features characters coming to terms with being occupants of a fantasy world, understanding that they are inside a lower order of reality, and this theme resonates in Deltarune too. The idea that lower order reality has influence over higher order reality, and this theme is true of the reality we currently live in, where the subjective truth is being leveraged to keep people ignorant of truths and keep them contributing to systems that harm them. The Matrix also features characters dealing with a lower order reality, but that story is outdated. I discussed this in my recent TADC video, but the cultural mythology around lower order reality has changed. And now, instead of escaping these realities, media has shifted into embracing and even celebrating the powers of these lower order realities. The lower order reality everyone is faced with today is, of course, the internet. The web is a hyper-real net covering reality, with every human containing in their pocket a conduit to this reality that they occupy more frequently than the real world. Did you know? In the USA, 7 hours and 11 minutes is the average screen time for an adult, rivaling the time that person is in school or at work or dreaming, literally while asleep. This lower-order reality has become, in many ways, more real than reality, with the president leveraging his online following for free publicity and 2 presidential terms. The internet, the simulacra, the matrix, the simulation, the panopticon, the everything app. All of these are windows into our very own dark worlds, and by Yalda Bayoth are they leaking. I had a dream last night. I was walking through the woods. My arm was missing, it was bleeding and festering. I shouted into the woods and no one could hear me to help. I kept hearing louder voices in the woods and found myself wishing I had a voice that loud. Eventually I forgot about my bleeding arm and found myself only wishing for a louder voice. Finally, with all my might, I screamed at the top of my voice and promptly died happy. Then I woke up. Deltarune, formerly known as Survey Program, was released on PC in 2018, and subsequently on a variety of platforms the coming years. The success Toby Fox found publishing Undertale catapulted him into success and fame, and now he is a household name, an auteur on par with his former idols. Deltarune is Toby's dream. Why is Toby's dream so bright? Why can everyone see it? How many people have decided to share his dream for a while? How many people hate his dream? What is it like to have a dream so small turn into something so massive? Why doesn't everyone achieve their dreams? How will you chase your dream? But, is Deltarune a fucking video game or not? Easy answer, usually yeah. It's sometimes something else, but most often, Deltarune is a game that you play. For some, Deltarune is an experience vicariously enjoyed by the screen of a streamer. For others, Deltarune is a wiki that they explore for hours. For some, Deltarune is a piggy bank that they extract viewers from. Looks directly at the camera. But most often, for most people, Deltarune is a video game. Sometimes on the Nintendo Switch family of systems, but most often for the PC. Never for the PlayStation. But no matter what form Deltarune takes, it is always inside the borders of a screen, which are definitely real and never leak into reality, and will never have any influence on anything outside the borders of the screen. But hey, that's just a theory. Again.